Aloha, this is Dr. Martina and welcome. What would you say is the hardest thing to do in a relationship? Is it pleasing your partner, making them happy? Is it staying in love? All these answers could be right, but I think the hardest thing to do in a relationship is to have honest conversations with your partner, especially when it comes to sex. In this video, I will discuss how to have this awkward but necessary conversation. First, I would like to examine why it is so challenging to have this conversation. You know, the bottom line is that we don't want to upset our partners. We don't want to be a complainer. We don't want to be the reason for the lousy quality of sex. We don't want to be confronted with sex that we don't want to have if we complain about the lack thereof. Now, we don't want to be rejected. We fear it, and because rejection doesn't feel good, and it will never feel good. We fear that if we complain about the quality of sex and hurt our partner's ego, then the advancement will stop altogether. We will be branded as someone that one cannot have sex with, and will be marked as the worst lovers of all. Now, what if we complain about the sex, and then when we're being asked what is it that we like, that we can't answer that? Now, these are all reasons why we don't have this conversation. And guess what? You're not alone with all these justifiable reasons. You know, in a survey, researchers shows that 60% of long-term relationships know what their partners like. And even more importantly, only 25% know what they don't like. So the bottom line is that talking about sex is awkward, especially if you haven't done it for months or even years, and you let it all cook up to some frustrating place where we don't have a way out. Well, let me help you with this, and let me show you how you can approach your partner and start this necessary conversation. First, you have to recognize and acknowledge that talking about sex is difficult. We're being tricked into thinking that the activity of sex is natural, and therefore we should have no problems at all talking about sex. But the desire of sex, or desire to have sex, is natural, but talking about it needs to be learned and overcome. Secondly, start the conversation by bringing in positives, verbal positives, and a positive attitude. I like it when we ... I like it when you ... you know, and say these things with a smile, and then have some questions prepared that you want to ask your partner. Like, how do you feel about our sex lives? This way you're going to keep the focus on dialogue and not a monologue of criticism. And most importantly too is show your emotions about having this conversation. Emotions of excitement and feelings of awkwardness and fear. There's nothing more intimidating than wanting to convince your partner to have this difficult conversation under the pretense to have all the answers. So do this together in a dialogue with questions and honest feelings. Now, the timing of the conversation is also essential. If you're having this conversation while you're in bed, it could put your partner on the defensive, and your frustration may get the better of you, and your words will be critical, not positive or enthusiastic. Some couples think that in the afterglow of an orgasm is an excellent time to have this conversation, which can be the case, but if you're not experiencing afterglow, then this is obviously not helping you. Choose a time when you love your partner and you know that you can bring positivity, joy, enthusiasm, and your prepared questions. Now, be aware that this is a series of conversations. You won't solve the problem or get honest answers in your first attempt. Communicating with compassion, understanding, and honesty will take multiple attempts, and it is knowing that will not put pressure on yourself or your partner. And also know when to call a professional. A sex therapist like myself can mediate the situation. We can ask questions that you're not thinking about or that you're afraid to ask. If your partner agrees to contact a sex therapist, be proactive about it. Embracing the awkwardness is my last and I think most liberating tip. If there's a need for a conversation about sex, that means there's a gap of sexual intimacy between you and your partner. Most people want to fill that gap with the kind of sex they used to have, that used to be there. But that's impossible because we are different people now, especially if children have come along or a lot of time has passed. It will be much easier for you to embrace the awkwardness of this conversation if you look at it as an opportunity to have the kind of sex life both you and your partner want to have at this time in your relationship. If love and the intention to make this work are there and mutual, only good things can come out of this conversation. So I hope these pointers are helping and are inspiring you, and I hope that when it's time to call a sex therapy, or if it's time to call a sex therapist, that you will do so and connect with me. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your intent to have a healthy sex life